Hey everyone, what's going on? It's Alex from alexmaydrums.com, and today I'm resetting my recording studio. So in the past few months I've got some new gear, I need to put on some new drum heads, and I have this month off from playing out live with my band, so it's giving me a little more incentive not to have to deconstruct everything every few weeks. So with that, I just figured I'd document the process and show you guys what is all involved in a recording studio setup when you're recording drums. So let's take a look. So now I've more or less got the kit where I want everything to be placed, so it's easiest for me to kind of move around the drum set without straining myself or stretching out my back or anything. So let me go ahead and walk you through just how I've got a few things set up and what kind of equipment I'm using, because it's changed a little bit since a few of the other videos that I've done in the past. Alright, so with my kit set up the way it is now, I'm playing with a 14-inch snare here. I have a 10-inch rack tom and then a 14 and 16-inch floor tom. Got 18 and 20-inch crash cymbals. These are both medium thin crashes from Zildjian, and a 21-inch raw bell dry ride from Sabian. I've got 14-inch Zildjian K hi-hats, and then an 18-inch China, which I think is just Agazarian brand. It's not the greatest, but it works pretty good. It's got a real trashy sound, which I kind of like, and you can typically get that to set pretty well in the mix. So with that, I've also got a 22-inch kick drum, and then just going to change the heads out on these because I've had these on for a little while for a few sessions and a few live shows. So I'm going to switch these out and then kind of go over the method that I use to tune them and get a good rock sound, which I tend to go for. So the first drum that I'm going to replace the head and tune is going to be my new snare drum. I got this a few months ago. It's a Tama Starphonic Brass. It's a 14x6 snare drum. Sounds really awesome. It's really loud. So I'm going to replace the head on there. Right now I have an Evans HD Drive, which is just a 2-ply coated head with some little vents around the side. So it doesn't have quite as much sustain, which is good since you can crank it up a little bit and not get too much ring out of it and not too many of the overtones. What I'm actually going to replace it with is going to be an Evans Power Center reverse dot, which is a 1-ply head. So it's going to be about half the thickness, but it does have a reverse dot in the center that kind of focuses the sound and gives it a little more durability. It doesn't have the vent, so I'm kind of curious to hear what it sounds like with the overtones. May need to use some moon gel, but I think it'll be a little more versatile as well. So right now I've got it. Before we take the head off, I'm going to show you I have a drum dial. Basically this is just a little pressure sensor. So you press it on here, and you can kind of see it gives you a readout of how the tension is on these particular lugs. So right now I've got all these lugs tuned to about 89 on here. So I'm going to try and shoot for around that same sort of range with this one. So let's go ahead and take off the head. Alright, so now I've gotten the new head on. As you can see, I wiped down the bearing edge, which is just the contact of the shell where the head meets. And I also cleaned off the inside of the ring, or the rim here, the hoop. So that just cleans away any of the extra stick and dirt and dust and stuff that gets caught in between there. So what that does is it allows for the head to have a little better contact with the shell so you get the best tone and sustain out of it. So right now I've got these all about finger tight. Press down in the center a little bit just to seat the head. Now I'm going to go through and give each one of these lugs about 1/2 turn, so on the drum key, about there, not a full half turn there, through all the lugs, and I'm going to move kind of in a cross pattern to even out the tension so it's not super tight on one side and then super loose on the other side, so that way it kind of keeps it balanced and keeps the head in the best conditions. Not really too much of a tone right now, but that could be good for just like a real fat snare sound. This I tend to like them tuned a little higher, so I'm going to go through and crank it a little bit more. So now I have each tension rod tuned to about the same pitch, which I can go around and hear by tapping on the edge. So with those more or less even, and the head's going to still stretch a little bit over the first day or two, so I'm not going to super fine tune it at the moment. This is what it sounds like though. So now what I'm going to do is actually grab the drum dial and go through and see just about what tension this is on here and see how close it was to my old head here. So according to the drum dial, these are all at roughly about 88 or 89 on this dial. So I'm going to go through and just fine tune all of them and make sure they're right at 89. That way I've got a good comparison to what it sounded like with the old head and see if there's any tonal differences with it. Cool, so now all the lugs are at 89. So that's just what is being measured here when I go to each lug on here and put it by the individual rim, or the individual side of the rim there. So here's what it's going to sound like, just unmiked. It's pretty loud, got a nice crack to it, a little bit of sustain, but I can always dampen that with some moon gel. So I'm pretty happy with this at the moment. I'm going to put it on my kit, mic it up later, and then hear what that sounds like. So now let's move on to one of the toms. So next I've got my 14-inch floor tom. I'm going to follow the same process on my 10, 12, 14, and 16-inch toms. With this I've got an Evans EC2 clear on it, and I'm replacing it with the exact same thing, just because I found those to work really well on all my toms. So I've got a moon gel on here just to kind of dampen it a little bit more. I'm going to take that off for now. So I'm going to take this off just like I did on the snare drum, and then clean the bearing edge, put the new head on, seat it, and then tune it up. So now I've gone through, put on the new head, and I went through each lug and did about a half turn on the drum key just to get it up to about a little above finger tension. So this is what it sounds like at the moment. Which actually sounds pretty nice, so I'm going to go through each lug and see about how in tune they are with each other. And I'm holding in the center here just to eliminate some of the ring. So with that it's a little more dead and you can just hear the first note on the impact rather than the overtones. So just like the snare, I'm going to go through on the Drumdial just to kind of verify the tunings on the side of these. You don't have to have one of these. This is a relatively new purchase for me as well. With this, I just use it a lot just to maintain consistency from session to session if I'm not replacing the heads, so I can mark on different session notes if I've got the snare tuned to a particular pitch. It's a lot easier to recall if I'm doing something for the same artist in the same genre or punching in for another song. That way I can tune it to exactly the way it was before. So it's really just a time saver. Definitely does help though. So the big difference with toms versus your snares, the snare I didn't really do anything to the bottom head because that I just keep pretty tight and that's not super crucial to the pitch of it. Versus a tom, there's essentially three different schools of thought for tuning your toms. You can have the top head, the one you hit, also called the batter head, higher than the bottom head. The bottom head is also referred to as the resonant head. So you can have the top tighter than the top lower than the bottom, or them both relatively the same pitch. I've never really preferred the top super high and then the bottom lower just because you get kind of a weird pitch bend. So usually I'll have the resonant head a little higher than the batter head or them tuned to roughly about the same tension. The difference in that is that this is a 2-ply head on the top. So if I tune this to 85 on the Drumdial, if I flip this over and do the exact same thing, this is a 1-ply head that I've got on the bottom. So because it's only got one layer of plastic for the drum head, it's going to vibrate a lot more freely, so the pitch is naturally going to be higher even if they're at the same tension. So since I've got 85 on the top, I'm going to do roughly about the same on the bottom. So these are all tuned equally now. Tune them all to 75. I realized I'd been misreading the Drumdial there. So top and bottom are tuned to 75 on each lug. This is what the bottom head sounds like. And the top head. So even though they're the same tension, the bottom head is a little higher, just as a result of it being a thinner head. So let's hear what they sound like in conjunction with each other. So pretty good ring. I find when they're tuned relatively equal to each other, you get a lot more sustain out of that. That can be a bad thing if you've got non-pinstripe heads or a lack of moon gel, because those can ring out unnecessarily long sometimes. But with that, I'm going to leave this how it is because I like the sound of it. I'll probably end up tuning it just a little lower. So I'm just going to go and do these to my 10-inch tom and my 16-inch tom. And then I've got a 12-inch tom kind of up in the corner there as well that I'll use for recording as well. So I'm going to switch those out, and then after the tuning is all finished and let these kind of sit in, I'm going to finish setting up my microphones. It's going to be the next video and the next step essentially of setting things up, running signal through those. So keep an eye out for the next video, and I'm going to show you how I set up my microphones.